not want to hurt you. I just want to ask you some questions about this spaceship. Tell me, what is that horrible thing under the floor?
That is the Matmos, my child.
Pygar, back up. There's a room behind you.
It's been nearly 6 decades since Barbarella rocketed us into the most psychedelic corner of the galaxy. And honestly, the real lives of the people who made that film are just as wild as anything director Roger Vadim put on screen. We're talking Oscar-winning reinventions, tragic early deaths, Holocaust heroism, and enough rock and roll excess to fill a dozen VH1 documentaries. The film itself was a glorious mess of pop art costumes and soft-focus space opera, but the cast? They were genuinely extraordinary people, and their stories deserve more than a footnote. The film came out in 1968, at one of the strangest and most turbulent moments of the 20th century, and many of the people in it were already living lives that matched that chaos. So let's start at the beginning, with the woman whose name is literally in the title.
Oh, it's sort of nice, isn't it?
Jane Fonda, Barbarella. Jane Fonda was 31 when she floated weightlessly through the opening credits, already an Oscar-nominated actress, fresh off Barefoot in the Park. She'd been directed by her then-husband, Roger Vadim, which added a particular intimacy, and no small amount of controversy, to the whole enterprise. Sitting here in 2026, she's 89 years old, and if you're waiting for signs that she's slowing down, you're going to be waiting a while. The post-Barbarella career is almost impossible to summarize without it sounding like you're making things up. 2 Academy Awards for Clute in 1971 and Coming Home in 1978. A fitness empire built on VHS workout tapes that defined an entire decade. 7 Golden Globes, 2 BAFTAs, an Emmy. And then, when most people would have been content to rest on those laurels, she launched Grace and Frankie on Netflix and spent 7 seasons introducing herself to audiences who'd never seen Clute in their lives. It remains one of the longest-running original series in Netflix history. Her personal life has been equally full. 3 marriages, to Vadim, activist Tom Hayden, and media mogul Ted Turner, along with 2 biological children and very public battles with bulimia and breast cancer. Her anti-Vietnam activism in the early 1970s made her one of the most polarizing public figures of her generation, a reputation she spent decades navigating with varying degrees of grace. But the through line of her life, from space adventurer to fitness icon to streaming star, is a kind of stubborn refusal to be defined by any single version of herself. Barbarella conquered the universe with wide-eyed innocence. Jane Fonda conquered Hollywood through sheer, relentless reinvention.
Had me a good teacher. You got any more wagons you want fixed?
John Philip Law, Pygar, the Blind Angel. John Philip Law was 31 when he spread those magnificent wings, and it's hard to imagine anyone else in that role. There was something genuinely otherworldly about him, those angular features, that quiet, almost sorrowful dignity. He was perfectly cast as the gentle, sightless angel who carries Barbarella across a ruined city, and he played it without a hint of camp, which in that film was quite an achievement. Sadly, Law passed away on May 13, 2008, at 70, after a battle with pancreatic cancer. The years between Barbarella and his death were largely spent in the cult cinema world he'd helped create. That same year, 1968, he starred as the suave, stylish thief in Mario Bava's Danger Diabolik, and the 2 films together essentially made him a pop art icon. He appeared in The Golden Voyage of Sinbad in 1974 and The Cassandra Crossing in 1976, and though much of his later work came in European B-movies, he never seemed bothered by that. He genuinely loved genre cinema, and genre cinema loved him back. He maintained an intensely private personal life. No publicly known marriages or children, few interviews, a deliberate distance from celebrity culture. He spent his later years quietly in Los Angeles, far from the Italian and French studios where he'd built his reputation. There's something fitting about that, actually. Pygar was a character without memory, existing purely in the present moment. Law seemed to live that way too, not chasing legacy, just present in the work he'd already done.
Do you want to come and play with me? For someone like you, I charge nothing.
Anita Pallenberg, the Great Tyrant, the Black Queen. Anita Pallenberg was 26 when she played the Black Queen, draped in leather and radiating the kind of cool menace that cannot be taught. She was already the unofficial muse of the Rolling Stones. Not a groupie, not a girlfriend in the conventional sense, but something more like a creative nucleus around which the whole chaotic enterprise orbited. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Brian Jones. She'd been involved with all of them at various points, and the Stones' most artistically dangerous period, Beggar's Banquet through Exile on Main Street, is inseparable from her presence. Pallenberg passed away on June 13, 2017, at 75 from complications of hepatitis C. Her film work was always sporadic, but the performances she gave were memorable. Performance in 1970, alongside Mick Jagger and James Fox, is genuinely strange and brilliant, and she holds that film together in ways that still aren't fully appreciated. After that, the addiction years took over. Serious heroin use, the kind that hollowed out many of her contemporaries entirely. Her relationship with Keith Richards produced 3 children, Marlon, Angela, and a third, Tara, who died in infancy at just 10 weeks old, a loss that shadowed the rest of her life. What came after the chaos was perhaps the most surprising chapter of all. Pallenberg eventually got sober, enrolled at Central St. Martin's in London, and threw herself into fashion and art with the same intensity she'd brought to everything else. She was a constant presence at London fashion events in her final years, sharp and stylish, and completely herself. The Black Queen survived where so many others didn't, and that survival was its own kind of achievement.
Oh, no, stop! I command it! I'm Durand!
Milo O'Shea, Durand. Milo O'Shea was 42 when he played Durand, the film's delightfully unhinged villain, operating the excessive machine with the gleeful concentration of a man who genuinely believes he's doing science. He'd come to the role fresh from playing Leopold Bloom in Joseph Strick's adaptation of Ulysses, which tells you something about his range. Literary Dublin one year, psychedelic space opera the next. O'Shea passed away on April 2, 2013, at 86, after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. The career he built across those intervening decades was remarkable for its consistency and breadth. He appeared in Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet the same year as Barbarella, earned 2 Tony nominations on Broadway, and worked steadily in American television for decades. Judge Resnick in Oz, Dr. Mixter in The West Wing. He had that rare quality in a character actor. You never caught him acting. Every role felt inhabited rather than performed, and his distinctive voice, that warm, slightly mischievous Irish lilt, made him unforgettable. He was married twice, with his second marriage to actress Kitty Sullivan lasting over 40 years until his death. He had 2 sons from his first marriage, and he called New York City home for most of his later life, deeply embedded in both the theater and television communities. Durand was a one-film villain. Milo O'Shea was a career that just kept giving. Marcel Marceau, Professor Ping.
I want to describe what you said. You said, for instance, the experience, the witness of life.
Marcel Marceau was 45 when he turned up as Professor Ping, Barbarella's eccentric resistance ally, and he was already the most famous mime in the world. Barbarella was a genuine rarity, a film appearance from a man who spent almost his entire career on stage, in silence, with nothing but his body and his face. He continued touring internationally with his beloved character Bip the Clown until well into his 70s, and in 1978 he founded the École Internationale des Mimodrames de Paris, ensuring that the art form he'd spent his life perfecting would outlast him. He passed away on September 22, 2007, at 84. What the film doesn't tell you, what most casual viewers never knew, is that Marceau was a Holocaust survivor. During the German occupation of France, the young Marcel Mangel joined the French resistance and used his particular gifts in ways that went far beyond performance. He forged identity documents. He led groups of Jewish children across the border into Switzerland, guiding them to safety through occupied territory. The mime skills, the ability to communicate without words, the instinct for stillness and misdirection, they kept people alive. It's one of the most remarkable stories in the history of cinema, and it belongs to a man most people know only as a silent clown. He married 3 times and had 4 children, and he performed well into old age with a physical expressiveness that seemed to defy time. Professor Ping is a blink-and-you'll-miss-it role in a campy science fiction film. The man playing him was something else entirely.
After one of our secret escape shoots, we've established several secret escape shoots throughout the city, indicated on this map by these lights here.
David Hemings, Dildano. David Hemings was 27 when he played Dildano, leading the underground resistance against the Black Queen with a kind of rumpled, boyish charm. He'd arrived in Barbarella on the back of one of the most talked-about performances of the decade, Antonioni's Blow Up in 1966, which made him an international star almost overnight. The camera loved him in a way that was hard to explain and impossible to manufacture. Hemings passed away on December 3, 2003, at just 62, suffering a sudden heart attack on a film set in Bucharest, Romania.
The trajectory of his career is genuinely interesting to trace. The leading man roles that seemed guaranteed in the late 1960s faded through the 1970s, partly through circumstance and partly through his own restlessness. He moved behind the camera, directing episodes of Magnum P.I., Airwolf, and The A-Team, and he was good at it. A detail-oriented director who got strong performances from his actors. Then, in the late 1990s, came the renaissance he probably deserved earlier, scene-stealing supporting turns in Gladiator and Gangs of New York. He was 62. He looked like a man who'd finally figured out exactly how to use what he had.
Hemings was married 4 times and had 5 children, and he faced financial pressures throughout much of his life. But he never stopped working, and he died the way he'd lived, on set, committed to the work.
Well, you could let me make love to you.
Make love, did you say?
Yes.
Ugo Tognazzi, Mark Hand. Ugo Tognazzi was 46 when he played Mark Hand, the fur-clad poacher who catches Barbarella in his trap and then finds himself thoroughly outmaneuvered by her. He played it with a knowing twinkle that perfectly suited the film's tone, but Barbarella barely registers in a filmography that includes some of the great achievements of Italian cinema. Tognazzi passed away on October 27, 1990, at 68 from a brain hemorrhage.
He won Best Actor at Cannes in 1981 for Tragedy of a Ridiculous Man, and his work in La Grande Bouffe, Amici Miei, and the original La Cage aux Folles places him among the most significant Italian actors of his generation. He was capable of enormous warmth and devastating darkness, sometimes in the same scene, which is an extraordinarily rare gift. Married twice with 4 children, all of whom went on to work in film and television, Tognazzi was also a passionate cook who authored several cookbooks. Food wasn't just a hobby. It was central to how he understood pleasure and hospitality and the good life. In that sense, he and the film he appeared in had more in common than it might seem.
Police, and I can't spare the presidential band. Besides, you're 5-star, double-rated astronavigatrix.
Claude Dauphin, the president of Earth. Claude Dauphin was 65 when he sent Barbarella off on her mission, every inch the distinguished statesman, and he brought 4 decades of screen experience to a role that required exactly that kind of effortless authority. His career stretched back to the 1930s and crossed French, British, and American cinema with equal fluency. He'd also served in the French Resistance during World War II, which gave him a quiet gravity that no amount of acting training can provide. He passed away on November 16, 1978, at 75. Married 3 times, his final marriage to actress Norma Eberhardt lasted until his death. He was the kind of professional whose presence in a film simply made it better, and Barbarella was no exception. Veronique Vendel, Captain Moon. Veronique Vendel was 26 when she guided Barbarella's spacecraft, a French actress and model building a career in European genre cinema. Today, in 2026, she's 84 years old. Her filmography continued through the 1970s before she reportedly married and withdrew entirely from public life, a choice she appears to have made deliberately and happily. At 84, she's a reminder that not everyone who passes through the film world is trying to leave a permanent mark on it. Some people just do good work for a while and then go live their lives, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Serge Marquand, Captain's son. Serge Marquand was 27 when he appeared alongside Vendel as Barbarella's other guide, a working French actor and the brother of director Christian Marquand. He continued working in French cinema through the 1970s and 80s, often in supporting roles and sometimes as a production manager. He passed away on September 4, 1990, at just 49 years old. One of those losses that history doesn't dwell on long enough. The details remain private, which feels right to respect. Not every story gets a grand finale, and that itself is part of the larger story this film's cast tells, of glamour and tragedy sitting right next to each other, which is just how it tends to go.
I don't like the sound of that.